Good afternoon. Today I'm going to show you 3 types of illusions, and I'm going to try and convince you that they have some relevance to your everyday life. So believe it or not, this is actually all 3. It's going to start simple. And if you have your phone on you, could you just take a quick picture of the stage? So using the phones like this is quite interesting because if you survey the general population, most people will agree that memory perception works a lot like a recorder or a camera. The truth is significantly weirder. Let me show you. OK, so I've taken this away. Don't look at your phones, no cheating. But what I want you to do is try and repaint that image in your mind's eye. First thing people see is some text. A lot of times people also see some shapes, seeing some nods. Let's go more specific. The text reads Lund in the spring, and the shapes might include 2 triangles. Yeah? So here's where it gets weird. The last 2 things I said, not true. Break it down. Start with the text. This doesn't actually read Lund in the spring. There's an extra word there. All right? A lot of times people won't detect that the first time they see it, but it's really interesting, right? Because it's not a quicker than the eye situation. That word was up there for several seconds. Those are big letters. It wasn't physically hard to see, but your expectations about how that phrase ought to go can actually make you functionally blind to those letters. Next up, kind of the opposite, seeing things that aren't there. Let's talk about these 2 triangles. It really looks like there are 2 triangles, but if I kind of break it down a little bit, you can see that it's really just a collection of V's and Pac-Man shapes. But when you put them together, those triangles are really powerful illusions. So that white one in the front, right, those lines, those contours, those don't really exist, even though you can see them. They're fictions of your mind. So the next thing is a little bit of a cheat. This is the illusion of metacognition. Sounds fancy, not too bad. Metacognition refers to thinking about thinking. So in this instance, the illusion is the fact that those first 2, and you can kind of hear it from the crowd reaction, are often very surprising to people. But in a sense, they shouldn't be surprising. These reveal pretty fundamental mechanisms of how you see and remember the world around you. But there's a mismatch between how people think their minds ought to work and how they actually work. So that is an illusion of metacognition. So these can have some pretty serious consequences. In certain situations, like in courtrooms, in checkpoints, in the hospital, on the road, it's really important to know when you can and can't trust your perceptions. But there's a problem. If we're going to be talking about how these relatively simple illusions apply to kind of everyday real-world situations. But there is a solution. And the solution, believe it or not, is magic. Yeah. So in my lab, we actually use magic illusions, and we show people different kinds of things. So for example, we might show people live performances or videos of tricks, and we measure what they see and remember, they report it, and then we can measure those reports, and we can look at the differences between what they think happened and what actually happened. So like I said, I use magic tricks in laboratory settings to design different kinds of experimental psychological research. These days, I'm actually paid to design fake mind control machines to study how people perceive free will and different kinds of technology. A couple of bonus features baked in here. I mentioned this is all relevant off the screen. Some of you might think that I'm wearing glasses. These are, in fact, just empty frames. But maybe you hallucinated the glint of light off a lens. And finally, some of you may have failed to notice that I'm now wearing a different T-shirt than the one I was wearing at the start of the talk. If you don't believe me, check your phones. And thank you very much for your attention. I would also like to use my time for a little bit of a clarification, almost an apology, not really. I hope that you enjoyed the effects, the illusions, the tricks, and that hopefully you were deceived in a fun way. And if you were deceived, I would just say that these illusions work not because you're bad at noticing or because you're foolish. These are effective because they're exploiting otherwise very adaptive parts of your mind. So if these were fooling to you, it means that things are working. So if you experience the illusions, it's not because your mind is broken, it's just because your mind is perhaps significantly weirder than you imagine it to be. Thank you.